Good day. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio. I am Jerry Usher along with Debbie Georgiani and you. And Debbie, my goodness, here we go into the final full week before Christmas next week. Advent is just sailing by, at least for me it is.
Me too. This is crazy. I was out there shopping yesterday, and it was nuts. The parking lot was just packed. You had to walk like a long way to get to the entrance of the stores, and then people are just grabbing things, and it's kind of fun though. It's an adventure. It's a bit of a challenge. You know, I don't like to wait till the very last minute, Jerry. And I don't know if I told you this before, but I normally get all my Christmas shopping done well in advance, because I had this one Christmas many years ago that I waited till the last minute, and it was horrible Christmas. And so I do it in advance. But this year I'm kind of pacing myself because, you know, I'm worried about my mother, taking care of her affairs and doing other stuff. And so I'm kind of pacing myself, and I'm running out of time, Jerry. We're a week away to Christmas Eve. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, I was watching a little bit of football yesterday, and one of the commercials came on TV, and I could not believe my ears and my eyes, Debbie. They said, open until 10 p.m. Christmas Eve. And I went, are you kidding me? 10 p.m. Christmas Eve. Okay, I get that they want to get last-minute sales, but my first thought went to the employees, and I thought, okay, would you think you wouldn't think they'd want to be home with their families, maybe maybe going to mass Christmas Eve if they're Catholics or other Christian, faith traditions, going to services and so forth. So yeah, it's a little bit out of hand sometimes. So again, it's just important for us all to keep our focus on where it should be here during this Advent season.
Well, that's why I love Catholic radio so much. You know, it keeps us centered, it keeps us focused, and I just hope that all of our listeners keep EWTN on all day long. It's always great to have it in the background. When I'm cooking or doing something, I always have EWTN on. It sits. We have a Sirius XM box and speakers right on the kitchen counter, Jerry. And so it kind of blasts all throughout the family room and everything. And I'm always listening to EWTN, and it does keep me in a nice, calm, mellow place. And so, that's why we love Catholic radio. So folks, you're listening right now. This is your show, Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. I'm Debbie Georgiani along with Jerry Usher and you, because this is your show. You drive the show. So we introduce a topic, and then you take it away by your life experiences, your takes. So you can call in, you can text in, you can go on social media, YouTube, Facebook. Hi guys, your chats are going strong. You can email us, take2, the number 2 at EWTN.com. But when Jerry shares this topic, I think we can all relate. We can all think back of things in our own lives where we have experience with this. And then we would like you to be the teachers. So when phone lines are open, you can start calling now. But Jerry, I'd love for you to introduce the topic, because I think it's going to be a very active show.
Well, you remember it was, I guess, a game show on TV many years ago, Truth or Consequences. Many people will remember that. And I came up with this idea, truth and consequences, because sometimes in our lives, telling the truth will bring certain consequences. And we may know that, we may fear that, we may be aware of that, but our will, our virtue, we decide, I'm going to tell the truth in this situation no matter what. We want to hear from you if you don't have to share a lot of details, but if there's been a situation in your life where there was an opportunity maybe for you to let something go, maybe let something, get away with something, but you thought, no, you know what, I have to take responsibility for this. I have to fess up to having been the one to do it. And a few examples could be, for example, we hear, Debbie, a lot of times people put things on their resume that really weren't true. Or maybe there was an issue with your taxes and the IRS. And they came to you and you said, you know what, I got to come clean. I got to tell the truth on this. A lot of times, especially when we're in school growing up, we may look over at, a friend's exam during test time and get a couple of answers, and then we're confronted with that. Did you cheat on your test? No, I didn't. But sometimes, the truth is refreshing. When we tell the truth about something, there's something refreshing, cleansing, and healing about that, even when we accept whatever the consequences might be. So let's talk about this. Again, we don't have to get into the dirt and all of that stuff, but has there been a time when you said, you know what, I need to just admit to this and accept whatever's going to come my way?
Right. So here's the number. We'd like you to weigh in on this. Truth and consequences. 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986. And what's really cool about this show is you'll call in, you'll speak to Ryan. He'll talk to you a little bit, get you ready, put you on hold, and you get to listen live. Then when we call you up on the air, you're going to jump right into the discussion. You haven't missed anything because you've been listening live on hold. So you don't have to feel like somebody took your experience or took your story, because you'll have your own and you'll be waiting, and it's just very seamless and it's a beautiful conversation. Jerry, about this truth and consequences, you're talking to the wrong gal. Okay, I'm just going to tell you right up front. I'm the one, no, I think I borderline scrupulosity. I really do. It kind of runs in my family, actually. I was the one who disqualified myself from the spelling bee. I would have gone to the New Jersey State. I disqualified myself because I was in the finals, and the guy in the front row gave me the answer. He mouthed the answer, and I didn't realize that I could just say, "Excuse me, somebody gave me the answer. Give me a new word." I disqualified myself. Okay, so I mean, even my teacher said, "What were you thinking?" I said, "I don't know. I just panicked." See, that's the Catholic school in me. And then I also pretty much just psychologically disqualified myself from winning the New Jersey State Junior Championship in golf, because the gal that I was playing with, that I was actually beating her at the first 9 holes, she had gotten a 2-stroke penalty. I called her on it, and then I was so psychologically messed up that I actually ended up letting her win. So you're talking to the wrong gal, Jerry. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's scrupulosity. I don't know.
Well, again, this is not a topic that everybody's going to want to call in and weigh in on. We understand that. We do put topics out there occasionally like this that really require us to look deep within ourselves. And again, this isn't to beat ourselves up or anything like this, but just really to show maybe there are people, Debbie, carrying around the weight of having maybe quote unquote gotten away with something, or just had the opportunity to say, no, it was me. I did it, not that person. Maybe somebody else suffered the consequences for something that you did, and you're feeling weighed down by that. Or maybe it's something small. Maybe it's something little. Do you see this in your kids, for example? We see it in children a lot. Maybe your child did something, and you asked all of the kids, all right, who did this? And not a single hand goes up. But then all of a sudden, one of your kids says, Mommy, Daddy, it was me, I did it. And you're not, maybe there's a little bit of a consequence for that, but there's also this great pride that wells up in you as a parent. Have you seen this in your kids? Or maybe you were pleasantly surprised when you did come forward and say, you know what, I was responsible for that. The consequences weren't as drastic as you feared they might be. So let's talk about this. 833-288-3986. It's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and you.
Thanks for joining us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, and we're talking today about truth and consequences. We're talking about what happens in in your life, when you've had to deal with this? Somebody asks you to tell the truth. Are you willing to be upfront and to really disclose everything that is truthful? Or do you feel that you need to keep some boundaries? Some things are just private. That's fine as well. I just received actually a text message from one of my friends, Jerry, that heard me say what I did to myself when I was a kid. And they said to me, they're such good friends. They said, "You're such a dork. You should have won that spelling bee, and you should have you should have won that golf championship." I know. I've been living it my whole life. I get it. Sometimes you can be overly truthful, or brutally truthful, and then there's consequences to that as well. Okay, but just to highlight something real quickly, Call to Communion with Dr. David Anders. Please check it out, folks, this afternoon. Is that 2 Eastern time or 3 Eastern time? Jerry, what does that say? 2 or 3?
I believe it's 2 Eastern time.
It's not my eyes. It's
Tell the truth, Debbie. Come on.
Okay, it's my eyes. Okay, I'm over 50. What can I say? 2 Eastern time. Sorry about that, folks. It's just kind of smeared on my paper here. I'm trying to make excuses for my eyesight failing as I get older. That's not good. We should have a show on that about what happens. Seriously, Jerry, You went to glasses. See, I refuse.
I had no choice. You're over 50. I'm just a few years away from 60. So, but anyway, there's nothing at all wrong with
true.
that. So anyway, we were talking today about, having had opportunities in our lives to maybe let something slip by, maybe we did something or let something happen and we weren't really necessarily, it didn't come to light that we were the ones who did it. And all of a sudden, maybe there's a question, all right, who did this? I'm reminded, Debbie, of, there was a lot of unedifying stuff that this gentleman did as a comedian, but Richard Pryor, I grew up listening to a lot of his stuff, and he did this real funny skit about kids, and the parents, I guess, are away for a while, and they come home, and all of a sudden he was talking about how kids kind of dance around the truth on things like this, and
Right.
something a lamp got broken or something. He said, the parent says, all right, who broke that? And all of a sudden the child says, okay, I'm going to tell you, okay? And as soon as they say, I'm going to tell you, okay, there's this long story coming out. And so, this happens to us, no matter what age we are. So, again, maybe you've seen this in your kids. Yeah, and, here's another example. Maybe you were at the grocery store buying some Christmas gifts, and all of a sudden, you looked at your receipt or you saw something was rung up and the wrong price, much lower price was rung up. What do you do in a situation like that? You say, wait a minute, that actually should cost me more than that. So it doesn't have to be these huge, monumental things. It could be just little things in life.
Yeah. Well, and Jerry, we're talking about truth and consequences. It can happen at work. You may be confronted with something at work, and if you tell the truth, you could be going against your boss. You could be, causing other people to lose their jobs. You could be labeled a whistleblower, whatever. There's consequences to that. So what part are you going to stand up for what is right, the justice side of it, and not cave into the world? Because the world actually does support being dishonest, actually, and it's very unfortunate because we as Catholic Christians were called to a higher standard and a higher way of interacting. And the reason why I'm saying this, Jerry, is maybe somebody can relate to this. This just came to me actually, so I'm going to I'll put it out there just to see if anybody else. I was actually in one of the parishes that I worked at. There was a employee that his conduct was inappropriate. Very inappropriate. Let's just leave it at that. And I was told by the staff and even the pastor that, they were going to work with him and see if they could, I guess, rehabilitate him or whatever, because they liked him. They merely liked him. But it was wrong what he did and what he continued to do. Anyway, I had to make that decision. Was I going to sit quiet and just because everybody told me, Deb, just let it go. We'll take care of this. Or was I going to stand up and say something? And I chose to say something. And the reason why is because my assistant was one of the people that was kind of like, I guess you would call her kind of like a victim of it. And I couldn't bear that. She was only 19 years old. And I thought, this is just so inappropriate. And I went and I just took it to the greatest, I went up the chain all the way up. and they asked him to step down. And I don't regret it. Although what was beautiful about it is there was this see, and this is interesting, Jerry, about the consequences, because after it happened, I felt like I was just going to be ostracized. I was just going to be pushed out. Everybody was going to think I was just, a total loser for doing that, because everybody liked him. And wouldn't you know it, Jerry, I think it was 6 or 7 women came forth afterwards and corroborated the story. And so it was like God's way. I felt it was God's way of saying, Debbie, you did the right thing. You hung in there. You faced everything. And now these other people came forth. And so now it was just all out there. And everything turned out okay. Everything was settled beautifully. But there was that moment in time, Jerry, where after I did it, I thought, what was I thinking? So it's interesting, with truth, with telling the truth or exposing the truth, Jerry, there is that moment where there's the fear that sets in. What's going to happen next? And, just like what you said with the kids story, who broke the lamp? Well, what's the fear? The kids don't want to fess up because they don't want to get punished, So, it's very interesting how that all works with truth and consequences. And I just wanted to put it out there to our listeners. If you've ever faced something like this, what has brought you, what carried you through it? For me, it was my faith. I said, Lord, the truth will set you free. I know you're not going to let me drop. And he didn't. He didn't. In fact, he brought all these other people that came forth. So has that ever happened to you? Have you ever been in that moment where you've told the truth and you're like, now what? Oh, my goodness. And you've leaned on your faith. So please share with us, 833-288 EWTN. It's 833-288-3986. I was trying to respect everybody's situation in the circumstance I was talking about, Jerry, but I hope I made sense in what I was trying to share.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, we realize putting this topic out there, it's one that, you got to really kind of examine your life carefully and maybe be a little bit brave to call in, not only, do the right thing and tell the truth in whatever circumstances it was, but call up and discuss it here on the radio. But the thing is, for 3.5 years on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and I learn from you every day, and you learn from each other. I mean, we get emails all the time and other correspondence from people who say, you know what, I was listening to the show and what Mary said really helped me out, or what Brad or Jose or somebody said really was beneficial for me. So it's kind of a learning opportunity here for all of us. 833-288-3986 is the phone number. And I want to share also a situation about a very dear friend of mine, Debbie, who he was falsely accused by his adopted son of molesting the boy. It was an absolute false accusation. And my friend had the opportunity of actually a plea bargain. Okay, he would have faced, I think, about 18 months in prison. So either way, there was going to be prison time, or at least possibly with the trial. But with the plea, there definitely would have been. And you know what he did, Debbie? He did not do it. It was something he wouldn't have done in a million years. He wouldn't even have dreamed of doing. So he actually held to the truth. He says, you know what? I cannot admit to doing this because I didn't do it. He didn't do it. Right. Yeah, so he actually told the truth, knowing, Debbie, that if this went to trial and he was convicted, he could have faced, well, there was, I think, 75-month prison term. There were 4 counts. So, it could have been like 25 years in prison. And actually, he was found guilty it was a very sham trial, and I won't go into all of that. But it could have been, could have, like I said, there were 4 counts. But the judge at sentencing, thank God, said, the sentences the terms could be served concurrently. So he was able to serve in effect one 75-month term. Still was in prison over 6 years, and so. That was a situation where he told the truth, again, knowing that either way there could be consequences, but the consequences could be much worse by telling the truth. So, I mean, that's a drastic situation. Again, being undercharged at the cash register and not saying anything about it is something very, very different. But these things happen to us all the time in our lives. What do we do when we're confronted with these situations?
Yeah, and that took away 6 years of his life, That's just, I think for most of us, Jerry, it's not as dramatic as that. There's an embellishing of the truth, or, a changing of it, or a twisting of it for whatever reasons. And that doesn't make it right. It's still sinful, and it's still damaging to our lives and our souls. But, let's talk about what the truth really means. I mean, we live in a world right now where everybody's on different sides politically, and so you want to speak your truth. People may say, well, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. And that's happening. That's happening in families, Jerry. It's horrible. I mean, we should be able to respect each other and let each other speak their truth and respect their dignity. We may not agree with it, but we can respect their dignity. What do you think about that?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I think everyone's dignity should be respected, their opinion, their personhood. This is the thing. I think we find so much contention in the world today, and people people want to speak their minds and stand up for the truth, and sometimes there are going to be consequences for that. But if we disagree with people, that doesn't mean that we should attack them, that we should break them down in any way. There should be great respect without necessarily admitting to someone holding a wrong position, or without being afraid actually to speak up for the truth. And you mentioned like social media. It's one of those battlegrounds, like you said, in today's world, where sometimes telling the truth, even speaking it on social media, like faith matters and political matters and so forth, it really could have consequences. We talked about when does something cost you a friend. We did a recent show on that. So there are a lot of times in life when the truth, Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and we have to be able to and willing to speak up and stand up for the truth.
Well, you were talking too about the resumes. That's always interesting because I worked in human resources for a few years, and it's interesting because resumes would come in frequently, and you'd read them, and there's always these embellishing of the resume. Instead of saying I'm a technician, they'll say I'm a specialized whatever. They use these words that make it sound more just more prestigious or something greater than what it is. And it's interesting how we've had to do that in this world in order to try and get ahead. And so I don't know, would that be considered, Jerry, not telling the truth if you kind of, beef up your resume a bit?
Well, yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. We hear oftentimes we hear about high level examples of this. I remember very clearly there was a football coach some years ago who lied about, I guess, some degree that he had received, which he had not, on his resume. Now that was lying more than embellishing, but yeah, I think that embellishing is another example of this, because it's very easy for us to want to flower things up a little bit and make them sound a little bit better than they are. It may not be a lie, but then we're called on that, or sometimes references are called, when you talk about the resumes, and then it comes back to us. The prospective new employer will call us and say, well, tell me a little bit more about this, and they're kind of digging into that, and then the conversation gets pretty deep, and sometimes we have to say, well, it wasn't exactly the way I put it out there, so yeah, it's a good example of that.
Okay, so we'd like to hear from you. This is your show. Please call in if you're prompted by the Spirit. We believe there's no accident to that. We believe you have something to say that you can teach us. So there is a couple open phone lines, believe it or not. Remember, we're a week away from Christmas Eve, so a lot of people have their minds focused elsewhere, and we understand that, but we're going to ask you just to take this brief time that we can spend with one another, and we'll have a very vibrant discussion on truth and consequences. If you would call in at 833-288 3986.
Okay, let's see what you have to say about this. Stephen is in New Philadelphia, Ohio, listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on our friends at Living Bread Radio. Hi, Stephen. Welcome.
Howdy.
Howdy.
I listened into your radio station, and I was driving down the road, and I just wanted to tell you a story. When I was much younger, I'm in my 60s now, but I guess I was in my late 20s, and I had a job selling mobile homes. A young couple came in, a guy with his father-in-law, and they wanted me to sell him a mobile home. He had just gotten out of prison, and they wanted me to sell him a mobile home, and the fellow wanted me to lie about his work history on a form, and my boss wanted to fill out this form, and they wanted me to make up this story about his work history, and the boss wanted me to fill out the form, and the father and everybody was going to back up this lie about his work history, and it was a federal form, and the boss wanted me to fill out the form, and I saw these bars, federal bars, fall down before me like it was a federal form, like,
Right.
I can't lie about this. And the boss wanted me to lie about it. And I said, I'm not going to lie about this. And he said, you either sign that form or I'm going to fire you right now. And I went, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And he said, well, you're fired. And I said,
Wow.
I laid the form down in front of me. And I said, I'll see you later. And he said, well, you're fired. And I walked out the door. A week later, I had to tell that story to somebody who wanted me to work for him. It turned out to be the best job I ever got. And he gave me the job because I had told that story to him, and it was the best job I ever got, and I worked for him a long time, and he ended up just blessing me so much. He was a good Christian man, and I worked for him for a long time, and he actually just honored me so much. It was
Wow.
a blessing in disguise.
Stephen, hold on right there. Wow. This is a perfect example of what we're talking about. Who else has something similar to share on this? Stephen, hold on for just a minute. Take two with Jerry and Debbie. 833-288-3986. When has telling the truth possibly cost you something? Take two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio. Here's our phone number, 833-288-3986. You can text the letters EWTN to 55000 with your first name and a comment. Might be a small data rate, or we get comments at take2@EWTN.com. That's email. And also on social media, because we stream the video via Skype on YouTube and EWTN Catholic Radio Facebook page. And we're talking with Stephen in New Philadelphia, Ohio. Stephen, beautiful story about how you were asked to lie about something on your job. You knew that you couldn't do that. You held to the truth. You held firm. You stood, held to your convictions. And you knew the boss even said, you're going to be gone if you don't do this for me. And you did it anyway. God certainly turned around and blessed you, with that new job that you had for a long time. But the thing is, the core of the story is we have to remember that regardless of what we fear the circumstances might be, we know there's going to be a blessing in telling the truth. It may not come in the form that you experienced. It may come, it may not come in the form of, another new job that's maybe the greatest job we ever had or whatever. But I think just peace of mind, peace of conscience, because ultimately the truth is a person. The truth is Jesus Christ. And what we do to ourselves, we warp ourselves in some way. We do violence to our own soul, our own spirit, by not telling the truth. And so, Debbie, what it gets down to is really preserving that integrity so that we have that peace of mind and that right relationship with Jesus, who is truth personified. And Stephen did that, not having any idea what the consequences might be. And God did turn around. God chose to bless him in that way.
Well, my Italian's getting the best of me right now, Stephen, because I just want to say something. Shame on your boss for putting you in that position. I think that is horrible. I was a manager for many years and a business owner, and I think that is a terrible place for you to have been in. But you made it. You made a wise choice, and shame on him for doing that, because that is just wrong. And then to say to you, if you don't do this, you're going to be fired. So now you're going to be ultimately punished financially. I mean, that's horrible. I really just, if any managers or business owners are listening, please do the right thing, because to put people in that kind of position is terrible. I'm just curious, Stephen, not that I'm wishing any harm on your old boss, but whatever happened to him? Was he prosperous, or whatever happened to him? Did you ever follow up with him?
I don't really know. I walked out of there with my knees shaking, and I never saw the man again. The business closed down about 2 or 3 months later, and the lot was empty, and I can only hope for the best for him. All I know is the man who saved me, and I do believe it was a salvation, did prosper and is still prospering, and I pray for him every day, and I pray for that guy too, because that's our responsibility, is to pray for those who harm us. And I know that my prayers go with him as well. So we're supposed to pray for those who harm us, and our prayers are just as good for that guy as it is for the guys who bless us. So we got to remember that too. And it's not our prayers so much as the grace that comes from our prayers through Jesus Christ. And so that's what we got to remember, is that we're responsible to pray for those people who harm us. And it's not our prayers. It's the prayers, the guy who backs up our prayers, the Lord Christ.
Right.
Yeah. You're a good person, Stephen. You really are. I love that about you. Yeah.
And it's the man who backs up my prayers who makes me good. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, and Stephen, his grace was working in you, and like you said, you would wish no ill upon that prior employer. The fact that the business ultimately shut down within a few months, we don't know why. You don't know why. It's not necessarily a punishment. Maybe God just saw that coming and said, Stephen, I want to bless you. I want to prosper you. I'm going to, God said, I'm going to rescue you out of that situation and put you in this other situation. And like you said, that new employer that you went to work for, his business prospered and flourished. And maybe it was the blessing that God bestowed in you and through you, and you carried that with you, and your virtue, your honesty paid dividends beyond just your own life,
Right.
This other person, like you said, rescuing you, and that other person, benefited greatly as well. So there's something
Jerry, we do serve a justice God. We do. And vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And, so, I don't wish any ill will to that man, but whatever happened, maybe that was the consequence of his actions, and he had to learn from it. My mother always says, what goes around comes around. You wait long enough and you'll see it come back to bite you. And so, I just wanted to say, Stephen, you're an inspiration to all of us. And that's, is there anything you would like to impart to those that are in the workforce, and they maybe are faced with this on a daily basis? I mean, it's going on. The pressure's there. Everybody's trying to climb the ladder. Everybody's trying to get ahead, and they're willing to do it at all costs. Is there anything you would impart to those? We have a lot of young listeners that are listening right now, Stephen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're to make the difference. We are the cutting edge. We who have faith are to make a difference in those who have no faith. We are the hope for the rest of the world. And we, in our suffering and the wrongs that are done upon us, are done upon the wounds of the rest of the world. And we are the hope rest of the world through Christ who is in us. He is in us, and he is working through us. And when we suffer because of the Christ that is in us. And so we make the difference. We are his hands, we are his feet, and he is doing his work through us. So we keep the work going that he started in us. And so our prayers are the righteousness that he intended to keep going for the rest of the world. So I suffer today because of an illness that's in me. My wife has an illness in her. We have this suffering that keeps going, and we keep praying. We keep hoping. We keep the faith going for all those who can't see it, who don't have faith. And we keep praying for the rest of the world. We keep the faith churning for Christ, who expects that out of us.
Wow,
Amen?
Stephen. Amen, brother. Amen. I can speak for Debbie when I say we listen to you exhort and bless us with what you're saying for a long, long time. Thank you, Stephen, so much. And just one last thought. I can't help but think, Debbie, about the blessing that Stephen's truthfulness was for this other individual who asked him to lie, and the company went out of business. And maybe that individual looked back on that and went, you know what, maybe that was a convicting moment for them to realize, you know what, that was not right of me. Maybe Stephen's actions and even what he and his wife are going through right now are bearing fruit in that person's life and maybe turning their life around and bringing them to a deeper, conversion and conviction about the truth. So
absolutely. We're all connected, body of Christ.
It has a broad ripple effect. Thank you, Stephen, so much for your call.
Thank you, Stephen. That was a very powerful call. Thank you for being prompted by the Spirit and calling in. Okay, let's hear what Nancy has to say in Vail, North Carolina on Ave Maria Radio Online. Hi, Nancy. Thank you for waiting and welcome to Take Two.
Hi, thank you. So I don't normally call in, but I really felt compelled to do it this time. So my husband was working for a really good Catholic company before we moved here to North Carolina, and so he decided to sell. And so when we moved to North Carolina, he got a job, not too far from here. And so he was there for about 6 months, and he started, getting suspicious about the servers that people were getting, putting things on. So he prayed about it, and he had a meeting that morning, and he found out that they were doing pornography at the company. So not shortly after that, the FBI had to come in. They confiscated a bunch of servers because of child pornography. So my husband was like, oh, my God, this is really bad. So he got a meeting with the bosses and everything, and he said, look, because he's an IT guy, and he said, look, I've done this for companies before. We can, weed this stuff out and, get rid of those servers. And they said, what, are you kidding? This is making us money. We can't do that because they were doing adult pornography, which is unfortunately legal. So he came home and he told me what was going on. And he said, we both said, you can't stay there if they're not going to get rid of it. So he quit without having a job. And it was really scary because we still have kids at home and we live on a big farm and we have to feed animals and ourselves. And so he quit because of that.
Wow.
It was scary.
Nancy, did I hear you correctly? Did you say this was a Catholic-owned company?
No, well, the company that he worked for first was Catholic-owned, but the guy decided to sell the companies. So when he sold, so I'm sorry, I'm not clear on that. So when sold the company, he sold it to this company who was then doing the pornography. I don't think the Catholic guy, I don't think he knew, though. So of course, we didn't know because my husband would have never taken that job. So he sort of moved into that position with the new company that was bought out. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so Nancy, so in order to make money, the bottom line is always follow the money. In order to make money, they're willing to let these people sacrifice their souls and compromise their dignity and their morality and to lose their moral compass and everything just to make money. Good for them. So what is that going to get?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Right,
Good for them.
right.
That's
So my
amazing to
husband,
me. Go ahead.
yeah, it was terrible. So my husband met with them and he said, I can help you weed this out. We can set up things but they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So my husband said, well, if you don't do that, then I have to quit. And, not to brag or anything, but he was making six figures. He held a very high position, so they really needed him. And but they obviously didn't need him that much because they let him quit.
Right.
So they were trying to talk him into staying.
Sure.
Yeah,
but
go
he,
ahead.
excuse me, but he walked away from a six-figure job. Okay. So what does that
Yeah.
say about your husband's morality, his
Integrity,
virtue, his integrity? Thank you, Jerry. Yeah. I mean, your husband is amazing. And you know what? I hope others got wind of it and saw that your husband walked away from a big paying job to not lose his Christian morals and ethics. You know what? I think that is awesome. And praise to God that your husband had the strength to do that, because a lot of people would say, okay, I'm just going to shut up and be, collecting those fat checks every week. I'm going to do that because my family needs it. They'll justify it. They'll rationalize it. But no, your husband took the high ground. Way to go. I pray that blessings and continue prosperity happen for you and your husband and your family, because that is a person we should look up to as a hero, a Christian hero, because that's amazing, Nancy. That took a lot for your husband to. I mean, that's huge.
Well, and Nancy had to be a part of that as well, because being married, they both had to be in agreement with that, no doubt.
Yeah. I'm sure he's never regretted his choice.
It was scary. I mean, trust me, because we're sort of self-sufficient, and we have a farm to take care of. And but my friend told me, she said, you know what? She goes, the money that you're getting, your paycheck is blood money. It's dirty money because it's being made off pornography. So after she said that to me, I didn't care about anything except for my husband getting out of that. But I'm so proud of him because he was showing a good example to our son, and our two children. It was, but he was out of work. Now this happened several years ago, only 3 years ago, but it still happened. And he was out of work for over a year. But the Lord did bless us. Can I say am I allowed to say online who he got a job with, or am I allowed to mention that or no?
Sure.
I don't want to
Sure,
say.
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so he got a job with Apple, and it's right down the street from us. And I know there's a lot of things people say about Apple and everything, but it's a great company, and he has moved up the ladder very quick. They're clean. And it's just an awesome blessing.
Wow.
And he's really happy there. So, yeah, I think we got blessed quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm
Good.
proud of him, too, for doing what he did. So,
well, now you should be really
anyway.
proud because you just told your story on a worldwide platform, so other people are listening to this, and other people can be in a position just like your husband was, and they hear your story. They may muster up that courage to do the right thing, and that's what we need. We need more of the right thing being done. Nancy, way to go! That was a home run with us. And Jerry, you use Apple products, don't you?
Well, I do, yeah. And as Nancy said, you were starting to allude to the fact that, Apple's no corporation is perfect. But I think what it gets down to is, the church's moral teaching would differentiate between, remote, participation in any sort of sinful things. I mean, Apple supports sinful causes. Most corporations do. But you're talking about proximate involvement as well. And your husband was directly involved in the proliferation of pornography and so forth. So there could be there could be a differentiation there. And your husband made a very courageous decision. You both had to make that decision, like we said, and it's great to hear that he has been blessed in that way. But you went into that not knowing. You had no idea what was going to happen. Your husband could have been unemployed for 10 years. You could have lost your farm. It could have been a lot of very, very unfortunate things, but God would have been with you no matter what. And Debbie, he was with them in providing and holding things together for them in the meantime, that year that he was without a job. So
very brave. Very brave. I loved it. Great story, Nancy. Thank you so much. Keep telling it because young folks need to hear it. Thank you so much. And we're glad you called in. We're glad that you listened to the Spirit and you said yes and you called in. Linda did as well in Northville, Michigan on Ave Maria Radio. Linda, I hope I said that right. Is that your town, Northville?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. Hi, Linda. Welcome.
Great. Hi, thank you. I just had a story that, and unfortunately I was the bad guy in this story, but I was a real bully when I was growing up. And I, sorry, I'm a little nervous. I went to a reunion class reunion, probably like 20 years later, and I saw the one girl that I remember bullying, and I walked up to her, and she kind of looked a little standoffish at me, and I said, could I speak with you just for a quick second? And she said, yeah, and I just gave a full confession, and I was just welled up with tears, and I was crying, and I said, I just have to express to you how sorry I am for doing what I did to you. I have no excuse. What I did was wrong, and I could completely understand if you would never forgive me for how mean I was to you growing up, but I can tell you in my heart that I am truly sorry. And she, looked at me and she said, I completely forgive you. She said a lot of people were very mean to me, and I just said, I'm so sorry I participated in that. A lot of kids, she was a victim from a lot of kids, but for some reason I just jumped on the bandwagon and went right along with them and was just as mean as could be. But she forgave me, and that was something that I'll never forget. And I was very grateful for that. And I expressed my gratitude, for her forgiveness. And funny enough, a couple years after that, I was at a little reunion type of thing, and a girl came up to me, and I said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And she said, "Oh, gosh, I was hoping you weren't coming up to me." And I said, "What?" And she told me that I was very mean to her as well, and I thought, I didn't even remember this at all. And I said, oh, my gosh, I am so sorry. And I spoke with her just quickly enough to know where she worked. And she worked at the school, and my kids were going to that school. And I wrote this big, long, apology letter to her. Even though I didn't remember, I'm sure what she said was true because I wasn't a nice person. And she later told me that she shared that letter with her class, several of her classes, just as an example of, how mean kids can be and how they can regret it when they grow up. So that's my story.
Well, Linda, you said you weren't a very nice person, and we all do things a lot of times out of peer pressure, especially when we're in school. We want to look good, we want to be accepted, and all that. And if that's the direction some of our friends and peers are going, we pile on. I remember there was a girl in my class in school who everybody just for some reason just zeroed in on her with their bullying and their wrath and so forth. There's always that person there, and I probably did some of that, but I remember too feeling really sorry for her, and I prayed for her so many times. But what's beautiful about this is, time and distance and separation and all of that can be healed. 20 years later, you had this opportunity to, in essence, make amends to this woman. She totally forgave you. This is the beautiful thing, that God is always present in the midst of situations. You carried that around for a long time, and you had the sensitivity in your conscience to realize that you had done this, and the other one you weren't really conscious of, but you admitted up to it. So, yeah, I think it's just beautiful, and it shows that even if it's sometime later, we can always do the right thing, tell the truth, and bring about healing into a situation. Deb?
Yeah, and I think it's going to have lasting impression that with that encounter that you had with that gal, and when you apologized and you had that, and she forgave you. I mean, that's gonna enable her to have closure and healing, and it brings you healing as well and closure to it. And that's what happens when we mature and grow, especially in our faith. We realize that the things that we did as kids were foolish. We were doing them, like you said, Jerry, to be accepted or for a false sense of power or whatever it is. That's why gangs happen, because everybody wants power and acceptance. Okay. And as we get older, we realize that was silly. And there's always a chance to at least make amends, to say we're sorry. Even if she didn't accept it from you, Linda, it was still great that you did it. I think that's wonderful. There's a lot of people that in their childhood experiences, they say, you know what, that was my past. I was immature, whatever, I'm going to let it go. No, what you did, that just goes to show your heart. It really bothered you and you cared about it enough to have some healing there and reconciliation. I think that's awesome of you to do that, Linda. Anything else you want to share with us? Because, there's a lot of people out there right now. You called yourself a bully back then. I think we can all, in some way, shape or form, be bullies at times, even on the road, even in if you look at the stores right now, everybody's kind of pushing and shoving each other. That's kind of a form, right? So, I mean,
tis the season, right?
Yeah, 'tis the season
for
to
throwing
be obnoxious.
elbows. Yeah.
So, what do you think? What do you think, Linda? What could we tell our young folks that are listening right now that are maybe still trying to learn their way?
Yeah, that's, I'm not sure about that. I've told the story, a few times, and, maybe it's helped some people in their own way, but going forward, what to tell them, I'm not really sure,
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I was just grateful that she was willing to hear me, and, the forgiveness meant everything. And even, my gosh, this was probably 20 years ago that I, encountered her, and still emotional. It still, reduces me to tears just remembering that moment, just so much guilt I carried, and, that she forgave me was like the biggest gift of all,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it releases all kinds of peace of mind and healing and grace. Grace builds on nature. When we do the right thing, God's grace just floods into the world. And you brought a torrent of that grace into your life, into your friends' life. So that's beautiful. And you've just shared that with the world. And so, Debbie, I know a lot of people who may be carrying around the same sort of burden. It may not be an identical situation, but certainly could have the opportunity to do the same thing. Linda, thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing that with us. And before we go to our next call, just want to remind everybody that there are many ways to listen to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and all of the other EWTN radio and TV shows. Podcasting is another way of saying, well, it's audio on demand. So if you have a smart device, a tablet or a cell phone or what have you, you just simply go to EWTN.com/podcast and you can subscribe, in essence. So what happens is when there's a new episode of our show or any other show that you like uploaded there, you can just simply have it automatically downloaded onto your device. You can listen on the airplane, in your car on the way to work, wherever you want to do that. EWTN/podcast is the way to make that happen on your device.
Sounds great. Thank you again, Linda. We're going to move on to John in Orlando, Florida on Sirius XM 130. And John, we probably only have about 60 seconds. Can you go really quickly? We wanted to get you on the air. Hi, John.
Hi, John. Hey, so just really quick, my main regret was losing my faith at the age of 15 because of a nasty divorce with my parents. I recently just rediscovered my faith, and I'm really grateful for that after 21 years or so. And it's been the most amazing thing. It's crazy how quick things seem to feel better as soon as you accept Jesus into your life.
Amen. We're not going to disagree with that. We totally agree with you, John. You're right. Everything it makes sense. Everything works for a purpose. You realize that everything happens for a reason, and you begin to understand yourself. You begin to grow closer to God. John, that is awesome. You're on a great path. I think that's fabulous. More power to you. I think it's great. Keep learning and growing and just soaking it in like a sponge. That's what I do anyway, right, Jer?
Absolutely. John, thank you so much. We appreciate your input, your take on this. And Annika and Janet, we are not going to be able to fit you in today on the program. I wish we could. Just want to close with a couple of Lisselle via email. Mm-hmm. Lisselle said, counseling is very helpful in this. Opening up about yourself / various issues can sometimes be very difficult to talk about, but one has to speak the truth in order to be helped. The counselor, in many ways, sometimes becomes like your soulmate and could lead to transference issues. You could then be left in an even more difficult and confusing confused situation than when you went there the first time. But she's talking about truth in counseling being very helpful, Debbie, even though it can cause us some consternation at times.
Right.
And our friend Timoteo said just now he was inquiring if he was able to obtain more medical aid. He says, my current conditions do not hinder me from any activity. So in good conscience, I told the truth. Since I was not disabled, I was not eligible. There's a perfect example. Tim, thanks so much.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. Thanks, you guys. You did a great job. You can always email us, take2, the number 2 at EWTN.com. Tomorrow we got another show planned for you that I think we can all relate to. Can you cut the tension with a knife in your household right now? It's just it'll be less than a week away from Christmas. And I'll tell you what, tensions are running high. Maybe you have tension in your household all year long. That's another problem as well. Let's talk about it tomorrow on Take 2 with Jerry and Debbie.
All right, thanks for being with us here on this Monday, final full week before Christmas coming up. Have a beautiful and blessed day. As Debbie said, we'll talk to you tomorrow.